Well, just as some confidence seems to be rearing its head on the Nigerian market scene, there's a fresh succession crisis that seems to have taken hold at the NSE, with the DG failing to formally tender her notice of resignation or retirement. Run us through what's playing out there.
Thank you, Alishia. Good morning. It's something that, it's given some measure of concern right now because for any established organization, you want to be confident. There are established rules and procedures that need to be followed to ensure basically the smooth running of operations. As far as the NSA is concerned, I think, it's just from the perspective, that we had this sort of issues sometime in the past where we had the same succession issues surrounding the presidency of the NSE. And it looks as if, one would expect that all that would have been resolved conclusively by now. I think, yeah, it's a bit of concern in terms of, confidence, in terms of what exactly is happening with the organizational structure of the stock exchange. But I think, by and large, we don't expect that it's going to directly impact trading so much. We've seen a situation where investors are getting a bit more savvy, being able to actually separate the fundamentals of stocks from whatever political or otherwise might be going on, in the periphery of the situation. So the concern is there, definitely. It's not something that inspires confidence in whoever would want to be investing in such a market. But at the same time, we don't think it's going to have such an exaggerated impact.
One would assume this is especially true in a context where we've got the banking sector just making, so many headlines day after day. We've got results certainly adding to the impetus that's been provided by the asset management company being formed. What are your overall impressions of the numbers that have so far been released for the first half of this year?
I think by and large they're just in line with expectations. A lot of those figures are just basically, like I said, what we expect. We've come from an era where we had serious provisioning, where we had a lot of stringent rules being imposed on the banking sector, where we had concerns being raised about, asset quality of those banks. A lot of that playing out in the latter half of last year. That seems to have been improving right now. And the first things that I begin to see is a right back of some of the, recoveries and provisions that have been taken before now. Meanwhile, because of the crisis that happened, risk aversion still persists. Lending is with extreme caution and focused on corporate from which there's a limit to the sort of rates you can actually expect. So you have that spread also tightening. Basically, what you have a situation where with cautious lending as well as competition for the very few blue chip companies, you're having top line really being pressured across board for most of those banks. For most of them, the improvement that we've seen in terms of earnings have been from right backs, from recoveries of some of the provisions that have made before. Diamond Bank, interestingly, is the only one that has said so far that they've not written back anything to the P&L. They're just saying that they're watching the prudential guidelines. Yeah. But I think for most of those banks, the story is basically that if you look at the figures, top line still under pressure, and then you have some sort of improvement in bottom line. So that's basically in line with our expectations.
For now, in line with expectations is what seems to be good enough. Zenith Bank specifically, as I was saying earlier, seeing quite a bit of a positive reaction on Friday. It closed close enough to limit up by the close of Friday's session. We know that this has been amongst one of the healthier banks. So certainly those results coming as little surprise. But what do you make of this bank's muscle now to acquire, now that we've got AMCON soaking up that bad debt off some of the, the unhealthier banks?
I think the acquisition story, it's one that I don't think is going to happen in a rush. Clearly, with the developments in the banking system over the last 1 year, some consolidation is clearly needed. The CBN has come out to also support that process. A lot of Nigerian banks as well, including the FCMB, one or two others, have also shown interest, in acquiring one or two of the cleared banks. We have the opinion that such consolidation is necessary and will likely happen. As to specific timelines, we cannot really say right now. But with the AMCON on board, coming to provide some sort of framework, I think what we're going to see is a situation where some sort of clearance of the bad loans that have been seen, first of all, happens. We then see a true picture of what the banks look like, and then some of them would then, be clearly attractive enough for investors, either domestic or foreign, to want to take positions in that. So I think over the next few months, what we're expecting to see, first of all, is the AMCON come into operation, take off some of those bad loans that I've mentioned, and then we can begin to talk of clear opportunities for mergers and acquisitions within the sector.
Well, if we look at a bank that has certainly not hidden anything about its intentions, it is First Bank. We know that it's considering now this secondary listing right here in South Africa, and it's said that a part of those funds will be used to fund acquisitions in Nigeria and abroad as well. What have you made by that move of the bank to run through with the secondary listing here in South Africa?
Well, one of the reasons they've given for that secondary listing is basically liquidity. For a bank that size, I think it's not much of a concern. What the management is looking at is alternate source of funding to fund the sort of growth that they've seen. It's the biggest bank in Nigeria, the largest capital base, and yes, I think for them to be able to sustain growth, they're going to need to get into one or two acquisitions. Some of that will definitely require raising fresh capital because of adequacy ratios as well as other considerations. By and large, I think looking at a market like South Africa for raising additional capital does not seem to be a bad idea on the surface of it. We've had other Nigerian companies who have done such listings in the past on secondary exchanges, both within Africa and then outside Africa. So I think in terms of accessing capital, in terms of giving liquidity as well to that bank, I think it's a good development.
Of course, that is a move that's now being opted for, as opposed to issuing a $3.3 billion bond as earlier planned. On the flip side, though, we've got Guarantee Trust Bank and EcoBank seeming to be under some pressure, and that largely surprising, where we know that Guarantee Trust Bank has been a firm favorite within this space, particularly. Take us through some of the pressure points that are being exerted on these players.
For Guarantee Trust Bank, really, it's not anything major. It's a clear leader within the industry. It's enjoyed positive perception from investors as well as competitors alike. I think the situation right now is you have some sort of over the last few quarters, Guarantee Trust Bank has often been the first bank to release results, set the pace for most of the other banks. But so far right now, we've had about 5-6 banks release results, and Guarantee Trust Bank results are not yet out. A lot of investors will tend to want to be concerned about that, but we don't see where the concern is really, because unlike most other banks that just release interim results, GTB releases audited quarterly results, and with a lot of banks now stepping up and releasing results a bit earlier, I think it's a bit easier for them to catch up with GTB's timeline for releasing results, since they have to wait for the audit. An AGM was held last week. We're expecting that sometime within this week those results will begin to hit the market. Not that we're still expecting an exaggerated reaction. For us, really in-house, the stock is about trading at a fair value. Yeah. So we're not expecting any significant upside. Our price target now is about 16 naira, and currently it's about 17. So for GTB, I just think it's just a bit of those technical concerns, really, about, okay, it used to release results a bit earlier, and it seems to be a bit delayed.